In the summer of 1518, a woman stepped into a street in Strasbourg and began to dance. There was no music, no festival, no reason anyone could see. She danced for hours, then into the night. And when the sun came up, she was still dancing, and she could not stop. Within a month, she would not be alone. Hundreds of people would be dancing beside her, some until their bodies simply gave out. This is not a legend. It was written down as it happened, and 5 centuries later, no one can fully explain it. So what could make an entire city dance itself to ruin? To understand it, you have to understand Strasbourg in 1518. This was a hard place to be alive. Harvests had failed, bread had grown expensive, disease moved through the crowded streets, and the poor were desperate. People lived with a constant, low hum of fear, and into that fear, one woman started to move. Her name, in the records, is Frau Troffea. One day in July, she walked outside and began to dance in silence. She wasn't celebrating. Her face, by the accounts, showed no joy at all. Her husband begged her to stop. She kept going. Hour after hour, her feet kept moving as if they belonged to someone else. She danced through that day. She danced into the next. Whatever had taken hold of her, it did not look like a choice. And then something happened that turned one woman's strange affliction into a crisis. Other people began to join her. First a handful, then dozens. Within a week, more than 30 were dancing. Within a month, contemporary accounts describe as many as 400 people caught in the same helpless motion, though historians still debate the true number. Picture that, streets full of strangers, twitching and turning, drenched in sweat, unable to stop. What would you have thought was happening to your town? The city leaders were terrified, and they did what people did in 1518. They called for the physicians. The doctors examined the dancers and reached a conclusion. This was not the devil, they said. It was the body. The dancers had overheated blood, and the only cure was to let the fever burn out. In other words, let them dance. So the authorities did something almost impossible to believe. They decided to help. They cleared open spaces. They opened guild halls. They built a wooden stage, and they hired musicians and pipers to keep the rhythm going, so the afflicted could dance the sickness out of their bodies. You can already guess how well that worked. Instead of fading, the madness spread. The music seemed to pull more people in. The crowds grew, and the dancers who had been moving for days began to break down. Contemporary accounts describe people collapsing from exhaustion, their feet bloodied, their strength gone. Later sources would claim that many died each day at the height of it. But here's what matters. The city's own records from the time say nothing about deaths at all. The grim death toll came only from stories told afterwards, and most modern historians doubt it. What is certain is that this was no performance. These people were suffering, so why couldn't they stop? Eventually, the authorities realized their cure had become part of the disease. They reversed everything. The music was silenced, public dancing was banned, and the afflicted were gathered up and taken out of the city to a shrine high in the hills dedicated to Saint Vitus. There, the dancers were led through a ritual. They were given small crosses to hold. Their feet were fitted with red shoes sprinkled with holy water. Priests spoke over them and prayed for their release. And slowly, strangely, it began to work. The dancing wound down. The crowds thinned. By September, the streets of Strasbourg were quiet again. The plague that had gripped an entire city vanished almost as suddenly as it had arrived, which leaves the question that has haunted this story for 500 years. What actually happened here? One popular idea points to ergot, a toxic fungus that grows on damp rye and produces chemicals related to LSD. The theory is that moldy bread poisoned the city and sent people into hallucinations. It's a tidy explanation, but most experts don't buy it. Ergot poisoning chokes the blood supply and causes violent spasms and pain. It would have made days of continuous dancing almost impossible, not compelled it. So the leading explanation today is stranger and, in a way, more human. Historians call it mass psychogenic illness, a condition where extreme psychological stress produces very real physical symptoms that spread through a group like a contagion. And 1518 Strasbourg was a perfect storm for it. Starvation, sickness, superstition, and one belief in particular, that Saint Vitus could punish sinners by cursing them with a dance they could not stop. In a population already terrified of that exact fate, one woman started to dance, and the fear made itself real, body by body, mind by mind. The people weren't faking. Their bodies truly rebelled. But the trigger may not have been anything in the water or the bread. It may have been what was inside their own heads. And even that doesn't answer everything. Why did it begin with one woman? Why did so many share the identical symptoms? And why has nothing on this scale ever happened again? The dancing plague remains one of history's true unsolved mysteries. A reminder that the human mind can do extraordinary things that science still can't fully account for. Because sometimes the strangest mysteries aren't buried in tombs or hidden beneath ruins. Sometimes they happen in broad daylight, in a crowded street, while hundreds of people watch the impossible unfold. If this story pulled you in, subscribe to Oddities and Echoes, where every week we go looking for the strange, the forgotten, and the unexplained, because the past still hasn't answered.